welcome back. In our previous session, we discussed the importance of context and understanding Scripture and the Bible story. Genesis, the book of beginnings, has a context, a very important context. Moses was the writer, and his audience was the children of Israel. The purpose of his writing to them was to prepare them to live on mission with God, to begin to outwork the covenant of blessing to the nations of the world that God had made with their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as mentioned in Genesis chapter 12, verses 2 and 3. We could consider all 5 books that Moses wrote, the Torah, to be the divinely inspired curriculum of God's school of mission for the children of Israel. What do you think? In fact, it's not just the 5 books of Moses that represent the inspired curriculum for God's school of mission. As we saw in our last session, all Scripture is inspired by God and for the very same purpose, to prepare God's people to live fruitful lives on mission with God. 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. The entire Bible, therefore, is in fact God's school of mission for His people and for every generation. The book of Genesis, being the book of beginnings, offers foundational teaching that sets the correct trajectory for understanding all of Scripture. And remember, like any other book, we must begin reading the Bible at the beginning and not halfway through, as so many Christians sadly tend to do, making it very difficult to discover the magnificent overarching story of the entire Bible. The first 2 chapters of Genesis are when everything is perfect and before the ensuing chaos produced by the fall. These 2 chapters, therefore, provide a foundational understanding of God's original plan for creation. This original plan remains unchanged despite the fall, and its fulfillment will be achieved and celebrated for all eternity. God is able and will fulfill what He started. Remember, the fall never forced God into an inferior plan B. God has only ever known a plan A, and that plan He will fulfill. In our last session, we looked at 2 foundational lessons from God's school of mission. The first lesson was for Israel to understand just who Yahweh was. Who was this God who had called them into covenant relationship with Himself? Moses pointed out to them that Yahweh was none other than the one and only creator God, the God of all gods, El or Elohim, and not some lesser demigod similar to the gods of the nations. The second lesson was that God had called them to work not for Him, but with Him. They were called to enter into His rest and partner with Him in governing and ordering His creation from infancy to full flourishing for the glory of God, in order that the whole earth be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Habakkuk 2 verse 14. We will now examine more closely God's purpose for man in His creation as described by Moses. Remember that this important teaching is part of the curriculum of God's school of mission. It is designed to help prepare the children of Israel to connect with their covenant God, Yahweh, and to live fruitful lives on mission with Him. Moses teaches that man was made in God's likeness and image for rulership over all the earth, to exercise dominion over all created things, Genesis 1:26, or as would have been understood by the children of Israel in their day, for royal duties, and to exercise kingly authority over the whole earth. Moses then followed up with the story of the Garden of Eden. Through this story, the children of Israel would have understood that man was to be not only a king, but also a priest. Moses was describing the Garden of Eden as sacred space due to God being in the garden. This the children of Israel would have interpreted as being a temple. In ancient times, sacred space was always seen as a temple. And by placing man in this sacred space, man became sacred to God, and therefore a priest serving in God's temple. So Moses was describing man, or Adam, as being created by God in his likeness and image to be a king and a priest, to represent the invisible God and his spiritual kingdom in his visible and physical world. The prayer Jesus taught his disciples to pray, "May your kingdom come, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven," had its origins in Genesis, with man being commissioned to see this purpose and this prayer become an earthly reality for the glory of God. In God's school of mission, the children of Israel were beginning to understand the significance of their calling. So when Moses later referred to them in Exodus 19:6 as a kingdom of priests, they would have understood perfectly what he was referring to, as would we as should we, when Peter refers to us as being a royal priesthood, 1 Peter 2:9, and when John in Revelation 5:10 says that Jesus, through his death and resurrection, has made us to be a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and we shall reign on the earth. And in Revelation 1:6, he has made us kings and priests unto God, King James Version. What did all this mean to Adam, who was the first to receive this kingly priestly commission, or to the children of Israel, who had collectively now received this very same commission? And what does this mean to us in this New Testament age, who now have this very same commission entrusted to us? Well, we will discuss all this in the coming sessions, but let's close with a sneak peek into the end of the story. We will take a massive leap from the introduction to the Bible story in Genesis 1 and 2 to the Bible's story's conclusion in Revelation 21 and 22 to see how all this works out in the end. So, in Revelation 21 and 22, we now have new creation, with time having now given way to eternity. We find John saying in chapter 22, verse 3, "The throne of God and of the Lamb will be in the city." This city is God's temple, Revelation 21:22. John then goes on to say, "And his servants will serve him." So, serving as priests. They will see his face and his name will be on their foreheads. And verse 5 says, "And they will reign forever and ever." So, reigning as kings. So we have God's people confirmed as kings and priests in God's new heaven and new earth and for all eternity. How does God achieve this? Well, that's what the Bible story is really all about. And a very significant development in the story will be revealed in our next session. So, see you next time.